no.
Peter!
There it goes. Okay.
Sounds.
So we have to redo everything.
No, we don't have to Pierre!
We do.
Pierre,
Listen,
you had one job!
back to the meeting. Listen to the meeting. We now return you to your regularly scheduled program. Good evening, Nico.
Good evening, Peter.
What you heard, folks, here, by the way, welcome to...
Your Niagara Falls Experience, episode 26.
26? Woo, that's half a year.
Yeah.
That's right. Soon we'll have our Christmas episode. Didn't we have that? We let the kids wild?
We did. That was dangerous.
Yeah. So I'm just opening up the video here while we're saying hello to everybody. But yes, it is May 10th. The tourism season is approaching.
Approaching. It's here. It's right here.
You're going to hear us again.
I can hear me hearing you hearing me.
I know. But I got to turn that off.
Why would you do that to me?
I don't do that to you. I do it around you.
Pierre, why would you do that? I can hear me hearing you, hearing me, hearing you. Well, you hear me and I hear you and we all hear each other.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
And a beer. We've lost all of our watchers. That was what did it in, mate.
Yeah, they're not happy.
That was it. They're all very upset with us.
Well, you know what they're doing. They don't tune in until 10 after when we normally sign in.
Well, see, that's the problem, Pierre.
Yep, but hey, we got there today, so we're going to get there a lot, eh?
What was our joke? We either start on time or we start with everything working, one or the other, right?
Yeah,
that was the deal.
You know what happens? I think when I played that audio clip, it knocks out the audio connector into the vMix. So, folks, what that means in plain terms is I screwed up. So, there you go.
Peter never messes things up, ever. He's
Always.
never made a mistake. Watch all 26 episodes and watch how many audio errors we've had. Spotless record. Spotless. You may be asking yourself why I am wearing a ridiculous amount of Duke Kaboom merchandise.
Well, let me ask you, why, Nico, are you wearing a ridiculous amount of Duke Kaboom merchandise? Speech impediment, okay? Just bought it.
Yes, Canada. The main reason was I needed something to wear today, but the actual reason that we have decided is the legal answer that we're sticking with is today we're talking about daredevils.
Yay!
People that make dares with the devil and lose.
Yeah, how does that work? I mean, I've heard of people selling their soul to the devil.
Well, you see, you go to Devil's Hole, and you wait in line. Yeah, you go to Devil's Hole, you wait in line, you fill out a form. You fill out a second form. You take that form across and then you mail it to New Jersey. Right. It comes back in 2 to 3 business weeks. And then you bring it back to Devil's Hole, and it's an official wager. And that is how you become a daredevil.
Ah. And like, I always thought it was like a ballot process, something like the Hunger Games.
Yeah, not quite. That's too organized.
Oh, that's a bummer.
I know, right?
So I think we're stalling because we're waiting for everyone to show up.
No one is here. But we are talking about daredevils today, and we're talking about daredevils because I looked at Peter and said, "What do you want to talk about today?"
And after I talked about golf in the Central African Plain, you said, "No, that wouldn't keep people's attention."
No, and I said, "Why don't we?" And then somehow we got on Robert Overacker.
Oh, yes, we got to show that.
Somehow we always... Really, first it was a 10-minute tangent on milk alternatives. And how I said I do not support any of this hippie nonsense like oat milk. Oat milk is very hippie to me. It seems like, hey, let's make, milk the same thing out of cereal. It sounds very California.
Yeah, granola.
Soy milk, I don't know what to go with that. Is it like soy sauce? I don't know. Almond milk I'm okay with. I used to not like almond milk. I was anti-almond milk, if you will. And then I watched a very lovely video from Max Miller, Tasting History on YouTube. And he discussed how almond milk dates back to the medieval period. And therefore, I mean, if it was good enough for Leonardo da Vinci All right, almond milk's good enough for me.
Was he medieval or wasn't he Renaissance?
It's all the same thing. Have you
it-
ever been to a Renaissance fair? I mean, anything.
Where is Angela, speaking of which?
Yeah, speaking of Ren Fair, no Angela today. I'm
Angela, where are you?
woefully disappointed.
I know, we'll save that one clip for her, though. She'd be disappointed if we showed it.
That is true. That is true.
Yes.
Woefully disappointed and everything. We have a call-in line.
Yes, we do, and there is a phone. And bloody hell, will one of you at least call? Just say hello. Tell us what you don't like.
Just the one of you. There's only one.
Yes. What is the singular of audience? It is audient. No, I don't think so. I am your audient.
Well, we were going to talk about daredevils, but if no daredevils daredevil this show, maybe the real daredevils are the people that watch our show, Peter.
Yeah, but we had a great time last week, didn't we? With our guest who may be back with us on a more permanent basis, I would hope. Yeah,
it's semi-rotating guests between the Beaver Shark Hunters, the Ohio Fringe Group, Dragon Lady. We now
Roland, the legitimate father of Nick the tour guide?
Yes, the legitimate. In fact, I ran into Party Marty the other day. For those of you who weren't paying attention, Party Marty was on our show a few weeks ago.
You said you ran into him?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I am getting work done on my car, so. No, I did not actually hit Party Marty with my car. You can't prove that, people. No, I didn't. But no, I ran into him at the park. We were working, and he asked me if I was hunting beaver sharks, and I said I couldn't find any. And he said, oh, it's probably because Nick and I finally got them all. And I said, well, Nick's father's going to be woefully disappointed about that. And he said, yeah, which means he definitely watches our show.
Yes.
That means he watches the show, but he did not mention the Michigan, and he did not mention Two Bears. So therefore, and he is not watching right now, so therefore, I call shenanigans, good sir. I feel that somebody is giving Party Marty the certain intel that he would need in order to understand our show. Well, and whoever that snitch is needs to fess up.
Wow.
We don't accept fake fans.
No, not at all. And you said the Two Bears?
The Two Bears, eh?
Da Bears.
Yeah, da Bears.
Well, what else do you do when your mom's watching, right?
We actually don't know. It could be my mother, it could be Nick. There's a 50-50 chance. Either way, I don't know which one I'm more interested in disappointing today.
You know what? I forgot to share it with some people. Hang on a second here. Let's see what we can do.
Sharing is caring, you know. For only $2 a day, you too can help save a beaver shark. Call now. Operators are standing by.
For only $2 a day, a child can have 3 meals, and $1.98 can go to the paychecks of high-priced executives.
The funny thing is, if you were watching this on rerun and you're wondering what this random stalling is, it's no particular reason. I think Peter and I have all this material on daredevils, and we worked really hard to set up this show.
Well, originally, I think it was supposed to be the Erie Canal.
The Erie Canal?
But then, yeah, remember we did the Welland Canal.
Oh, no, we don't talk about Erie. The Erie Canal's not even real.
Well, someone told me it was.
No. The Erie Canal is just a series of tubes, like the internet. It's a series of tubes.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, the Erie Canal is really just the internet.
Oh.
Like when your band, when your speed just throttles down real low, it's because there's a drought.
Yeah. All right.
Sometimes we have factual information and sometimes we do stuff like this. No, it would be a great thing. Let's talk about the best daredevil to ever go over the falls. You know what? It's the PlayStation 3. The PlayStation 3 was the best daredevil to ever go over the falls.
Now, how many of you out there watching on rerun or even live know what we're talking about? There's a local radio station. They've actually switched stations in the interim, but this radio show called Shred and Reagan had a bunch of PlayStation. What were they? PS3s?
PlayStation 3s. Yeah. The hottest item of 2007.
Right. And in that year, they had 5 of them to give away, and it gave one away on Monday, gave one away on Tuesday, one away on Wednesday. And I remember this because I was working with them on their car night at the Summit Mall. And they realized everyone that they'd given one to was going to just sell it on eBay. So they got really kind of worked up. So I think the thing to do is to show this. That should be fun.
Yeah.
So, folks, this is a video taken from YouTube with permission.
Why'd you laugh at that, Peter?
Well, I didn't really laugh, did I?
But that's...
All right, hang on. I'm going to skip the ad.
That's Bobby O. That's Bobby O.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wrong.
Right. Sorry. People get to watch me.
Wrong dense object going over the falls there, Peter. It's the one that's labeled PlayStation, eh?
Oh, you found that.
Yeah, that one. There you go.
Okay, stand by. So here's the story as told by the Shred and Reagan Show.
Recently on the Shred and Reagan Show.
Evil Jim. You guys have another PS3 to give away. Oh.
Why not put it over the falls, jackasses?
Wait a second. There's some brilliance to this.
It was a joke.
Package has been delivered.
The package has been delivered.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so good to hear.
So now that the package has been delivered, but does that mean the package has taken its deep plunge?
It's going. I saw it. I watched it go over. And I'm filming it now. It's in the middle of the river. It made it.
Oh,
now we
nice.
just got to see if we can find it.
If you're just tuning in, the PS3 was, as Jim just mentioned, the package was delivered. Over the falls it went.
Very
It went
nice.
over the falls. Hey.
Shred and
You think? Do you think Shred and Reagan had to pay a fine for that?
Oh no, they never. No one ever that I know of ever got them in trouble. But I think
We're getting
sometimes-
them in trouble today. That's it.
Yeah, but I think what happens, honestly, stand by for a little audio glitch here. Yeah, you say that again. All right, welcome to Deja Vu. But yeah, it looks like we're gathering more here. I'm just
So
watching for comments.
So he speaks up and then he dooms us all. Eh?
All right. So, no, they did not get into trouble.
I can hear me again.
You can.
Yeah. Yes. That is weird.
Now it's gone.
Yep, there we go. We solved. That's it, folks. We solved. We solved the homeless. Like Robert Overacker. You'll get that joke in a couple of minutes. You will. That is. Oh no. Yes, we are talking about Daredevils today. In case you didn't notice, we were just showing Shred and Reagan. If you're just tuning in, if you're watching on rerun, you've already seen it. Shred and Reagan sent a PlayStation 3, you know, the wonderful machine behind Modern Warfare 2, over the American Falls. And Peter's telling me that apparently they never got in trouble for it.
Nope.
So, I guess if it's not a person, you don't have to pay $10,000.
No, I think that's right. You could throw something over. If they catch you in the act of throwing it, I think that you could be fined. So, you know, certain friends of mine are safe. I'm not going to be throwing them over anytime soon because unlike a PlayStation, it would scream and a person would scream and shout and draw attention. The PlayStations just throw it over as a package. As you saw.
I really enjoy as you were telling that story and you said you were working with Shred and Reagan, you know, over at their car night at the Summit Mall, because we want to instantly date this to what time period this was. Yeah, I was over at car night at the Summit Park Mall. You remember
the Summit? Did I call it the Summit Park?
It's the Summit.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, at the time it was the it will forever be the Summit Park Mall in my heart. I don't care.
Everyone feels that way.
You could call it the Summit. You could call it Niagara National Sports and Entertainment. You could call it giant inflatable domes, but you know, it's the
Giant inflatable domes.
Those are coming to the Summit Park Mall.
They are. That's
Yes,
right. There's like huge development going on.
It's only taken 10 years So the inflatable dome project started in 2015 when Zoran Kokov bought them all. He was going to put 2 inflatable domes in a sports complex. A bunch of people in Wheatfield complained that it would block their wonderful view of Williams Road and their skylight or something, and the noise of the fans would be the equivalent of a public park. The complaints were really weird. So it stalled and some things happened, and then the pandemic hit. But now Zoran is back, and they're planning by the end of this year to have the domes back up again. Actually build them this time. So that plan's back, and you still have people that are complaining that the fan's going to be too loud. And one guy actually complained that like his he has a lovely skylight and it's going to block his view of the night stars. And someone else complained, and they were like, well, you should probably sell your house then before the property value goes down. I don't know what to tell you, buddy. Which is, just priceless. I love sometimes municipal government just gets me.
When I started working for the Summit, when I met a gentleman named Jim Anthony who owned it, and he was a businessman from Raleigh, North Carolina, picked up the mall on the marketplace, and he tried to restart it, but I can tell you there were a lot of issues against it, and a lot of the things that had buried that mall years ago were still working against it. But it was kind of fun seeing it being resurrected. And like you said about, it'll always be the Summit Park Mall to me. People would walk through and they would reminisce about a fountain or a store they would go to or when Santa was there. And it was so sad to hear people like feeling a connection to this place. And do you, in your experience, know what brought down the Summit Park Mall? Was it Love Canal?
No, it wasn't. It was not Love Canal. No, not even close. What brought down the Summit Park Mall was the same thing that brought down kind of the Rainbow Center. The Summit Park Mall is in a weird situation in that it is a suburban mall in Wheatfield. It was the first one here in Niagara, in this region in Niagara. I'm not counting Erie County. We're not talking about the Boulevard. We're not talking... The Gallery is kind of the newest. We're not talking about any of those. The Summit Park Mall was the mall. Then the Rainbow Center was built as to kind of compete in downtown Niagara Falls. And then at the same time, there was an outlet mall that was brewing in town of Niagara out of the old King's Drugstore that was slowly expanding. And then in the 80s, the Gramasians came and they wanted to build the Mall of America here in Niagara Falls. That fell through. In the early 90s, Benderson wanted to build a super outlet mall, and John B. Daly and Jake Polillo, the mayor at the time, said, not giving you a tax break for that. We have an outlet mall downtown in the Rainbow Center. Mind you, 1990 was the first year the Rainbow Center ever turned a profit, and it was when they converted themselves into an outlet mall. Oh, wow. But it was not doing too well. It opened in the 80s. Like it took them, like it was like almost 10 years to turn a profit. It was not doing well. The Summit Park Mall was kind of holding its own. And then the prime outlets occurred. See, Benderson took their mega mall concept, went over to town of Niagara, bought the outlet mall there, doubled its size, and by 1995 sold it off to Prime, who then converted into the Prime Outlets, which buried the Rainbow Center and somewhat buried the Summit. By that point, the Summit was already really bleeding because you also had competition in Erie County from places like the Galleria Mall. So you were dealing with the same kind of category that the McKinley Mall deals with, which is your anchor tenants in the Summit Park Mall were weird mess. Like you had like an AM&A's, which eventually, so then you had Sears and Bontown at the time I was a kid, but it kind of fell by the wayside. It was just like one dagger after another. Right. There wasn't the money to update it. So plus you were in the middle of a financial kind of upheaval that took out the Rainbow Center. Eventually, by the time we hit the 2000s, the Summit was no longer a mall. There was barely any stores left in it. They attempted to turn it into sort of this community center hybrid concept. They wanted to turn it into a Wizard of Oz amusement park. There's a lot of
actually, I worked on that project.
Yeah, this around the same time they were trying to do Aqua Falls downtown at the Flash Cube. There was a lot of ideas to try to save things that weren't going to work.
Chris Stoyanov, our good friend Sten, says The other malls caught up quick and became cooler and newer, and the Summit Park Mall started getting less and less popular. And in agreement with what you said, Factory Outlet came and squished it.
See, I appreciate like we've talked about Stens before. The reason I know half this information is because Stens in the city archives.
Note to self, put a hit out on Stens. No.
Don't you dare. Bring him on the show.
Well, when I worked there, I had access to a lot of the history of the place, and was it Benderson owned it, but they took over.
Benderson owned the outlets,
right,
and then sold the outlets to Prime, who sold it off to someone else who got bought out by Masaryk. Masaryk currently owns the outlets.
Who owned the mall on Niagara Falls Boulevard, the Boulevard Mall? One of the things we saw in documentation was that the ownership of the Summit allowed a lot of things to kind of rot. Well, they focused everything on the Boulevard Mall.
That would make sense.
That could have played in it, but
there was a lot of just a hot mess. The thing is, the Summit Park Mall, kind of how you say, like, people reminisce. I am that people. I ran a blog for a while from like when Zoran Kokov bought the mall in 2014. Until I gave up on it in 2017. Actually 2018, when Sears and Bon-Ton closed, I gave up on it. But yeah, I followed I still have. The reason that I knew what's happening right now with those domes is I have a Google alert set.
Hang on one sec there. You're going to have to keep going. There's a knock at the back door.
There's a knock at the back door. Wow, it's fine. I'm going to keep going. The Summit Park Mall. So the reason that I know what's going on at the Summit Park Mall is I actually have a Google alert set for the Summit Park Mall and Zoran Kokov. So I know what's going on with this project. Those are Google alerts I set back when I was in college. I actually have some of the limestone off of the back wall near the theater. A lot of it had fallen off. I have a jar of it. I am a huge Summit Park Mall fan. It's probably like my favorite mall of all time. I have a lot of good memories there. Going to Sears as a kid, going to Bon-Ton, going inside and just having these really great. There used to be a gumball machine. You put a quarter in and it would go through the slide and the maze, and there was a swinging basketball hoop. And you would hit the button, and when you hit the button, you'd try to get that gumball in the basketball hoop, and if you did, then you'd get 2 gumballs, and I got very good at getting the hoop, so I always got 2 gumballs. And that's really, I just need the Sun Park Mall back with 1 gumball machine, and I could relive my glory days.
Well, speaking of which, that was our landlord at the back of the door helping us with something in the hallway, and he complained that your shirt was too loud. No.
I feel that. I'm so sorry. It's very loud and Canadian. I don't think those things are allowed in this establishment.
No, that's something that people believe is, or a lot of perception is Americans are very loud. They're the loudest people in the room. And I'm sure Canadians would be the same way, but Americans are loud people. Like in a group of people, they are the loud ones.
We're excitable. I mean, we grow up in an environment that is very loud. America is loud.
Oh, absolutely.
And people from Niagara Falls, like people are like, wow, like I'm exceptionally loud. I'm Italian. We are loud. We grow up in a loud environment. In order to be heard, you must be loud. I also grew up in Niagara Falls. So very, very loud there. And Stens, you're sharing, yes, people following the comments, go look at the Eyewitness Niagara blogspot post. Stens, I have religiously looked at that post about a bajillion, ridiculous amount of times. Stens, at the time. So for those of you that don't know, Chris Steinoff, for a very long period of time, was the only source of like non-official information, like memories of Niagara Falls, especially of like the urban renewal era. So like anything from like the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, it was all Stens. There was no other blogs, there was no other info. The city archives were barren, but there's still a lot of stuff. And Chris is pointing out that, it's an old and outdated blog, but it's not really like, you're right. There's a lot of information on there on Eyewitness Niagara. Eyewitness Niagara was the start of my thesis. There was a bit on Lackey in there, and that was the start of me going, did Lackey really cause all the problems that they said he did? And then there I was 2 years and 56 pages of thesis later proving that it was not necessarily Lackey's fault. Not that anyone wants to read 56 pages of my thesis. That's going to be our audiobook. That's going to be when our podcast decides to have an audiobook. We'll do me, because it's a fascinating story. If you ever read the history of Niagara Falls, they've had, I mean, like, Peter, I know, like, we're joking and jest, but when my professors read that, because a few of them weren't from here,
right,
and I just handed this, I'm like, this is probably boring to you.
No.
And they're like, this should be an HBO series.
Oh,
the history of Niagara Falls government in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, particularly that like urban renewal stretch of when things were going really wonky, is some of the craziest things you can possibly imagine.
Well, that's when you and I first met and we talked about doing the show. I was blown away by your knowledge and your passion for how much bizarre stuff took place here.
It's weird. Niagara Falls is weird. We were just talking about this last week with Zoe, that like Niagara Falls...
Are you a...
Oops.
You a good witch or a bad witch?
Yeah. Oh, I think that's a Freudian slip on my finger there.
Zoe, hello! But you're killing me. But yeah, like that's one of the things is things are weird around here. And things that we're like, oh, that's normal. And it's like, it's not normal. None of this is normal. Which is probably, we should be going into the main event portion of our episode, which is the Daredevils.
Right.
Which is the least normal thing you can talk about.
Well, I'll tell you, just one thing I'll conclude on that. I'm glad you brought it up, though, is that when I moved here in 2016, I've been in the States for a lot longer, but when I moved to Niagara Falls and I started paying attention to public, to the government and the way things are done, I've got to say it's not normal. There are so many things here that in other communities, and I was involved in a lot of projects in other communities where I was in those circles, and it is bizarre here. It's absolutely bizarre, and it's like someone's put a glass dome over it and stand outside to look in on how the little animals play. You know, it's like the monkey house at the zoo sometimes. But that notwithstanding, and you're right, we should go to our reason for, what do you say? I was hoping Angela would be here by now because she would be great on the Daredevils.
We just need to shame her for missing the episode.
Oh, we will. Okay, so you want to start with the schooner?
Yeah, we're starting with the schoonery.
Or do you want to start with something else?
No, we're starting with the schooner.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Arr. Arr.
What's a pirate's favorite letter?
For many, the start of the carnival atmosphere at Niagara Falls was 1827, with the last voyage of the sad ark called the Michigan.
Niagara Falls became an important tourist site right at the time when the Erie Canal was completed in 1825. People could finally come pouring into Niagara Falls, and they did.
The hotel owners wanted people to stay longer. They advertised in the papers, "Come and see a ship go over the falls loaded with wild creatures." And people came to see this, to see the Michigan go over.
As many as 15,000 spectators looked on as the schooner loaded with animals plunged over the falls. The natural spectacle of Niagara Falls, it seemed, was no longer enough. The carnival had begun.
No, wait a second. Scroll back,
Niagara's
roll back,
next great-
bring the video back. Get to that photo. Get to the one of the boat. Yep, keep going back. I don't care about the people. Keep going a little bit more. There we go. Yeah, that one. That's not, wait a second. No.
It's not a schooner.
That is not the Michigan. Do you know what that is?
Was it the Caroline?
It is the Caroline.
Yes. I've been sitting here looking at it going, it's got a mid-wheel, like a paddle wheel midship.
Is your mic on, Peter?
Sorry, my mic was off because I was going to try and send a message to Angela. Send Angela a message. Tell her we're talking about the Michigan.
The Michigan.
Yeah. But this is not the Michigan, definitely.
No.
And everyone, this has been on the screen long enough. Someone just tuning in would wonder what that is. This is a ultrasound of the new dinosaur baby that's coming. So there you go. But no, in all seriousness, that was not the schooner Michigan. There are, I'll see if I can find one. There are a number of pictures.
There are.
Drawings.
Which is
really.
why I find it funny that they chose the Caroline.
Yeah.
Like, I guess the Caroline's a little bit more epic looking. Like, so for those of you, do you know the story of the Caroline, right, Peter?
Yes, that's why I knew the name.
Yes, Peter knows all.
No.
Tell us the story. You know what? That's a Canadian story, Peter.
Well, you tell that one, because I'm...
we almost caused a third war with England. Well, we didn't. Basically, it was a steamboat. The year was 1837.
42. Oh, no, it was 1837. That's right.
I'm looking at it right now via the Canadian website.
Oh.
I'm reading. I'm not that smart. But yeah, the year was 1837, which would be 10 years after the Michigan.
Oh, that's right.
Interesting. So there was an American. He bought a steamship. It was used for transportation. They parked it near... I actually don't know this story, Peter. I'm reading this now. I'm like, this is getting weirder by the minute. I didn't know there's a rebellion.
Well, yeah, it was the Mackenzie Rebellion. You're right. I
Canadians, Americans,
yeah,
the dang Brits.
Canada was still part of Great Britain.
That.
It was known in the area of Ontario, was known as Upper Canada. And Quebec, which is geographically higher, is Lower Canada. I'll have to explain that one day because it does make sense. But you've got... during the rebellion, the ship had been running between Navy Island, and I don't know if even people know about Navy Island, but it's pretty fascinating.
Navy Island is where we send all the ships to die.
Yeah, that's right.
Michigan left Navy Island too.
They go across the Rainbow Bridge, don't they? Anyway, British forces set fire to the Caroline, and there was a gun battle ensued. It was like an intrusion of the border by what you would call Canadians, but really just British settlers. So it actually created an international affair. Like you said, it could have triggered another war between Great Britain. And a group of private citizens and some militia, I think, are the ones that took it and burned it. So
sometimes you need to take a steamship, light it on fire, and hurl it over the falls.
You really do.
And sometimes you need to take 10 years before that, take an old decommissioned schooner, fill it with 2 bears, a buffalo, some geese, a bunch of other animals, and hurl that over the falls to sell rooms at your hotel.
No, there you go. There you go. Yeah, I always loved the Mackenzie Rebellion. That was interesting. And some of the wars or battles that were fought in Canada with the Fenians and stuff like that, Irish. And just so many things that people don't hear about that happened in this area. But the strange thing is that I think when we're historians, I do want to say this, when we are passionate about history and about life and about news and what's been happening in our community and stuff like that, we sometimes think people outside of here are going to be thrilled to hear it. And I really have to temper myself sometimes because somebody with it takes a lot of background to tell a story about something like that, because there was a rebellion there, and the shootout at the dock, so to speak, all ties into this affair. But we get really passionate, and sometimes people just want to look at a great waterfall. So we have to be careful, because I get right into this. Like
that this waterfall, over on the edge of this waterfall, multiple boats have gone over it, some other things have gone over. Look at all these. They're like, water. You're like, the water's not impressive. What's impressive is the history behind the water. They're like, no, the water's impressive. And you're like, no, it's not. No, I've seen this every day for 100 years.
It's interesting, guests that I've had the last few months, I'll make an announcement probably next week, but I'm transitioning from being in one field of tourism to another, as you know. And guests that I've had over the last few months, especially, who've been from other countries, etc., what really fascinates them is a way of connecting them to the Great Lakes and to the Niagara River, is telling them things like 20% of the world's fresh water here. And when people who come from India, Africa, places that have been affected by drought, I mean, they're imagining all this water. It blows you away. In Europe, it was funny, we had a group from Italy last week, and they were here from Naples, and they were talking about our streets, for instance, how big our streets are. In Italy, I've been there. The streets are tiny, you know. You got to grease your car on each side. But definitely the things that we find out people are interested in are often things that tie into where they're from. You know, like water, fresh water to someone from California. I mean, imagine that. Like people in California up until recently are sick of water, but they would hear this and they'd be like, "Why is it all here? Why isn't it being shared?" You know, that's a topic for another day. But
that's like I always get people from like New York City and stuff that are like the trees, like just the amount of park space.
Yeah.
The fact that there's just because outside of Central Park, New York is New York. Like outside of Niagara Falls is even more trees. Endless amounts of trees and fields, and if you're not hiking in the woods, you're out in the farms. Like agriculture is the other big industry.
Yeah?
It's a strange land we live in. Tourism and cows.
Yes, or touring cows. No, seriously, they can travel on their own buses.
They do. Yeah. They had cows over at the state park a couple weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah. It was the week the power was out.
Why do we have cows?
I'm telling you, weird. Like we said, Niagara Falls is weird.
Yeah, it's a little bit bizarre.
They were the descendants of Bossy Sims. The greatest daredevil that ever lived was a cow named Bossy Sims that would stand in the middle, mere feet from the brink of the American Falls, chewing its cud and then walk over to Goat Island, defying death every day and pissing off all of the tour guides in the northeastern seaboard. Wow, okay, now that I got that out of my system.
That went from Archibald asparagus all the way over to like Jimmy Candy or something. That was great. Because sometimes we get stuck in that Katharine Hepburn kind of mode, you know. We're figuring ourselves out here, folks.
There's nothing left to figure out, folks. What next, Daredevil, please?
Oh yes.
Bring on the next one, so we can rate the. Wait, while we're rating the performances, how do we rate the Michigan out of 1 to 10?
I give it a 1.
Really?
No, but animal cruelty. You're right. How we can't measure it by this era.
We need to measure it by the. Okay, so there's 3 categories. This is how we're going to do it like this. I got it. The 3 categories are on the sheer ridiculousness of it on a scale of 1 to 10. How good of a Daredevil attempt it was on a scale of 1 to 10. And just our personal views on it on a scale of 1 to 10, like how we would rate it. Right. So like how the first one will be like how good was it a great attempt? Was it a really bad attempt? Like overall, was it successful or not?
You think when Daredevils go over as 2 people, they go to each other afterwards, was it good for you, honey? Was it good for me? No.
Second one is how ridiculous it is, and then third is our personal views. So
Angela's here. Oh no, she's not. I'm reading last week.
You're reading. Why are you on last week? Okay, I'll start my rating because Peter's being distracted. He's very.
Well, I'm trying to get back up.
He's very distracted, folks.
Well, I'm a very distracted.
I can hear it. Mute your muties.
No, it
cause a
happens
mutiny.
every time I bring Facebook back up. I have to mute it, but it's a function that takes a second.
It's very shameful. Very shameful indeed.
Fine.
Anyway,
I put you alone up there.
Righto, I'll do the rating. So the rating, I'll do so.
Okay.
The pirate ship Michigan. That's what we're rating. On a scale of success, I'm rating it a 4. The boat kind of did not do what it was supposed to do. I mean, it went over the falls like it was supposed to. It wasn't supposed to break into 1,000 pieces before it went over the falls. It really, I mean, they accomplished their goal, but not really. Like, I don't think it was what they actually wanted. So I'm going to say like a 4 out of 10. As how ridiculous it is, about an 8 out of 10. So that it's not the most ridiculous thing that's been done in Niagara Falls. It's pretty far up there. I'll give it an 8. And as my personal view of the Michigan, like on a scale of 1 to 10 of like how much I will tell this story, the Michigan is a 10. I tell this story every time I'm talking about Niagara Falls. Like if we're doing tour stuff, I talk about the Michigan. So the Michigan gets a 10 on tell ability, a 4 on...
Ridiculous?
No, an 8 on ridiculousness, and a 4 on success.
All right, because you had one topic called how good.
Yeah, how good is
That's
success?
Success, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so I'll give mine now, simply to say that from a personal point of view, you gave me better perspective of it, that yes, it's quite valuable. I'll give it a 7, only because by modern standards, what happened on that is seen as bizarre. And it's kind of funny to think that, maybe 180 years ago, something like that was acceptable. And 180 years between us and something like that with all the animals on it. And how many thousands of years between us and the Roman Empire where the same thing happened, the spectacle of the gladiatorial games, etc. That man had not advanced that far in his form of entertainment until only recently. Springer was an example of that, one of our fallbacks. By the way, he just died.
He did.
Yep.
As did the great poet laureate of Canada.
Oh, Gordy. Yeah. I had a great conversation with Jerry Springer once. I'll have to share that on the show at some point. But right now, going back to my, and it was a personal conversation. Okay, so back to the ratings. I give it a 7 for its value to me, so to speak. How good of a stunt it was? Well, 15,000 people. I give it a 5, slightly more than I think you did, but that's okay. And then for ridiculousness, or like for the preposterousness, if you will, of the spectacle, I'm going to give it a 9.
Really?
Yeah.
A 9?
Yeah. Well, when you think of it, in the day, people being told all these ferocious animals, mind you, geese can be ferocious. We know that.
They can be.
So, looking to see, we got some people out there. Anybody out there want to call in, by the way? And if you want to give us your take. So that was our take on
the pirate
Michigan.
ship Michigan.
What would you like to do next?
I would maybe from one end of ridiculous to the other. We could do blunt. Let's do the tightrope walker. Yeah.
Niagara's next group of daredevils would go even further.
Another class of stunters here are the rope, or in some cases, wire walkers. People who walked across the gorge on a rope.
I think the wire walkers are drawn to Niagara Falls because Niagara Falls is monumental. Everything about it is big. Everything about it is spectacular. So it provides an excellent backdrop for high wire walker. And I think the great love of all high wire walkers is Niagara Falls.
And what more spectacular view could you have? People say, what does it look like up there? I have a wonderful view from my office. Every day I step onto the wire, I go to my office.
Jay Cochran is a modern-day high-wire walker. He carries on a tradition started by some of the greatest entertainers ever to use Niagara Falls as a stage.
My fellow Canadians, I salute you.
Well, of course, Niagara Falls has held a long line, a long tradition of tightrope walkers and wire walkers throughout history. It's about recreating what Niagara Falls was famous for 150 years ago. It's about bringing that second era back.
The first era of wire walkers began with a man who would become one of Niagara's most famous performers, Frenchman Jean-Francois Gravelet, better known as the Great Blondin.
In 1859, Blondin came here and set up a wire across the gorge close to the falls, and all summer long did everything possible on that wire, backwards, frontwards, crawling, cooking meals, washing clothes, you name it, the man did it that summer, and people were fascinated. And so he started something at Niagara Falls.
You have to think about it in terms of nobody ever having done it before. People were stunned that you could even put a wire across in the first place, and it is an amazing engineering feat. And then to actually get on it and walk across on it was even more stunning. He was able to project himself as a kind of a Superman.
Blondin was not a daredevil, per se. He really wasn't a daredevil. He knew what he was doing out there on the road. He was a performer.
He was not just a rope walker, he was a real showman. And an innovator, too. He came up with many different ideas of stunts to do on the rope. He was a real showman and drew tremendous crowds.
That was the great Blondin.
Yes. So
how about let's not vote on or do you want to rate Jay Cochran? Because we didn't see the parameters of what he did there, and he really walked over Niagara Falls, the city of Canada.
Yeah, I was giving him like 3s across the board.
Yep. He was quite amazing, but he was 600 feet in the air without a tether.
I mean, comparatively though, Nick Wallenda.
Well, Wallenda went across a waterfall, and that was a heck of an accomplishment. You know that when Wallenda applied to get for the stunt, when he asked to do it, Jay Cochran asked if, Wallenda was walking to Canada, he could have walked to the States because he was Canadian. But they felt that because Wallenda had invested so much into it, and it was a really proprietary thing for him to try, they left it just to be Wallenda. So that was pretty cool. But, so let's go with the Blondie. What do you say?
So on, what were our 3 options again? There was...
Well, ridiculousness.
Okay, we're starting with the ridiculousness. He went over 8 times, 1 time carrying his manager on his back, 1 time stopping to make an omelet. So I would say... making an omelet in the middle of a tightrope is pretty ridiculous. I'd give it about like a 6.5 on the ridiculousness. It's ridiculous, but it's not, it's not so ridiculous. Right. It's like, okay, you know what you're doing, you're just being dramatic about it. So like 6.5. As how good of a stunt was it? He set the bar for all the ones that followed. So I would say probably like a 7. And my personal view of it is kind of a 5. He's not even my favorite tightrope walker. So
Maria.
Yeah, Maria. It's always right.
Yeah,
but Maria's Belterini is the best one. Come on.
Oh, I know. Great. All right, so my rating for Blondin was very similar in one sense. On the ridiculousness of it, I gave it a 7. On the how good and how successful it was, I gave it a 7 as well. It was, what Paul Gramosiak said was that he wasn't really a tightrope walker. He was an entertainer. He knew everything he was doing. So, he's a calculated businessman in many ways. And then for personal view, I kind of feel the same way, but I do use a lot of his examples, so I'm giving him a 6.
All right.
All right, so who's next?
I think there's only one left.
Oh, that is correct.
That is on video. Before we show this one, do we just want to cover some rapid fire other ones?
Yeah.
Okay, so do we do Annie Taylor? I feel like we got to do Annie Taylor.
Yeah.
Annie Taylor's the first to go over the falls in a barrel. 63-year-old retired school teacher, lied about her age. Her manager stole the barrel, and his friend, who was an actress who was closer to the age that she said she was, ran away and pretended to be her, and she died penniless. She also sent her cat over the falls the day before in a barrel. So Annie Taylor, her success is kind of in hindsight, she's the first and people know her around here, but really it's a 5. She was not successful at the time, so it's kind of right. I'd actually rate it a 4. She was not, she successfully went over, but she never became famous. It did not succeed. Ridiculousness, it's a 5. It's not as ridiculous as it could be, retired school teacher going over the falls in an oak barrel, 5. My personal view of it is 7. I like Annie Taylor. I like her story. So personally, I'd rate it a 7, but the other 2 categories, she's getting sorry, this is 4 weddings. You're getting lowballed. I liked the food, but you could have gone with another pet, like a turtle or a boa constrictor, made it more interesting.
The most funny thing about all of this is how much things differ in the different tellings of stories. Because I've heard that her cat went over separately.
Yes.
And that it was not a success. People I've recently heard saying that her cat lived.
We hear the one that her cat survived going over.
Right. ...
That's like, not sure if she ever got to the cat. But yeah, the cat did not go with her. That's the only thing that we do know, is that she did not go over with her cat in the barrel.
And you saw the film they used to show at the IMAX at the visitor center, where the cat went in as a black cat and came out in white. That was a bit of artistic license, but it was funny. And we'll touch on one more in our Whirlpool round. Whirlpool round.
Yeah, let's
That's
go.
awesome.
The Whirlpool round.
All right. Who should we touch on for another daredevil or someone who challenged the falls?
You know what? We're talking about Whirlpool. Red Hill Sr.
The Riverman.
I would rate Red Hill Sr. at, so we're doing, okay. Success, 5. I'd say 5. He's not as well known as he should be, so we're going to say 5. Ridiculousness, 5. And my personal view of it, it's hard because Red Hill, like, him going through the Whirlpool Rapids is the least interesting thing that Red Hill Sr. ever did. Like, he did so many things that his actual daredevil attempt is the least interesting. Him rescuing the people off the old scow is an automatic 10. In my book, but that's not what we're grading. We're grading the Whirlpools. So 6. My personal view is like 6.
All right. I probably wouldn't differ from you that much. Red Hill Senior and Junior played such a key role in the whole history of Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
You know, they come along much of its timeline. And I find that really interesting, though, sometimes, the stories of that would go on in the river. You've seen Niagara with Marilyn Monroe, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned before that I do a tour of all the locations and what's still remaining from that era when they filmed it. And the one that gets me is Morris at the Niagara Falls River Patrol. You know, like, there was never a river patrol.
No.
You know?
No. It was just Red Hill Sr.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Probably it.
One more we need to add before the last one,
yes.
because there's just one more that we don't have video of, but we need to cover, just because I need to rate this one. Jesse Sharp. You can rate him first.
I have to admit, I don't have that much quick recollection of it. But
Jesse Sharp, the kayak, 1993.
Oh, he gets. Do
you want me to Can we cover this front to back?
Yeah, because you said Jesse Sharp, they showed a different one in the picture, and it made me remember Jesse Sharp.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think that I call that the modern era. You know, like they say with the modern era of football or baseball or film. I think that's. I think his was about a 5 across the board for me. I'm not really thrilled with someone doing that right now, doing it in such a way that they're so vulnerable.
So Jesse Sharp, for those of you that don't know, the legend, the mad lad of Niagara, Jesse Sharp in 1993 decided he was going to go over the falls in a kayak. When he got over the falls, he was going to go through the Class 6 rapids in the kayak, and he was going to spit out in Lewiston, New York. The best part about it is he made dinner reservations in Lewiston, New York.
Oh, that's right.
He was so sure he was going to succeed in this and not get arrested that he made dinner reservations. He did not succeed. He died. They did recover the kayak, though. So in, like, how successful as an attempt was it? The man did not wear a helmet because he was worried people wouldn't be able to see his face. The man gets a 1 in success. On how ridiculous it was, he gets a 9. And in my personal view of it, he gets probably also a 9 as well. I have a mixed bag. Do I condone it? No. Do I think it is the most ridiculous story? It is the second most ridiculous story to ever happen in Niagara Falls with Daredevils. That is my view. So it's a 1, a 9, and a 9.
$1.99. Welcome to the dollar store. No, I had it took a moment of recollection because I'm much older than you, my son. But no, you get blurry with them sometimes.
Yeah, they all kind of
when
blend
you're talking
together.
about them. I find the Daredevils fit well when you pick the right ones to the right crowd.
Yes.
You know, Annie, you were talking about Annie earlier. She lied about her age. How many times people have responded to me when I say that? Why would she lie about her age? It was so much better that she was 63 than 42. But in that era, she wanted to be seen as a woman of energy and you know, a future ahead of her. And so just stuff like that. You kind of pick your crowd and then you pick your Daredevils. You know, I can think of some crowds, you know. Where, never mind. Anyway, so what do you say? Shall we show?
Yes,
our
last one. Oh no. Oh no.
Take a little bit of a
$69 US Special Forces device turns men into beasts. This Marine Corps officer is bringing military technology to the public by inventing a device that emulates 54,000 crunches in 20 minutes.
You can skip the ad, you know.
I know.
You don't need your ab blaster, Peter. So that was our dear friend Robert Overacker, who went over the falls on a jet ski in 1995. My rating of Robert Overacker, for context, I will tell the full story. Robert Overacker, who did this to raise awareness for the homeless. His plan was to go over on a jet ski, and he had a rocket-propelled parachute that was going to deploy. That didn't happen. It didn't work. There's still a debate, Peter. Because 50% of people have told me that it did deploy, but it wasn't connected to his body. The other 50% of people told me that it just didn't deploy.
Again, there's one of those things that people really get differing information on. My understanding was, and the people I'd listened to for a long time, was that it had not been properly fastened, and when it deployed, it should have shown right away, and that's why people think it just didn't deploy. But that apparently it started to deploy, and then it pulled away from it, so it had no weight under it. So I don't know. You hear so much about stuff like that, you know. You pick your audiences, right?
Yeah. So my rating on success, 1. It was not success. It is the worst possible attempt at success. It is a moron! Like, he didn't raise awareness to the homeless. His parachute didn't deploy. He launched himself over the falls on a jet ski. He did not accomplish anything he was attempting to accomplish with this. So that's a 1. On the ridiculousness of it, it's a 10. He launched himself on a jet ski using a rocket-propelled parachute to raise awareness for the homeless. That's a 10. That is the most ridiculous thing you can do. And in my personal view of it, it happened the year I was born, so also a 10. So he gets a 1. So he gets a 1 for achievement, just 1. He gets a 10 for ridiculousness, and he gets a 10 for being probably my favorite story. My favorite Daredevil story. My favorite story is Captain Joel Robinson.
Oh, yes.
That's my favorite story. I got to tell that to a group the other day.
Good.
And I was very animated. There are photos of me looking like I should be dancing on Broadway to it, but...
Well, I give it a 10 for absolutely 0 for success. Sorry. Especially because one of the things is he was a Hollywood stuntman. Now, an interesting point was about a week and a half ago or so, I had a tour where a woman from Brooklyn said she knew him. She'd known him when he was alive. They were friends. So she was asking me about him. Anyway, but yeah, absolutely 0 on the success. And like you say, taking a cause or under your wing and trying to, so to speak, and trying to give that visibility through something that now it's associated with such a terrible thing, you know. But in terms of sheer spectacle, I give it about a 6 or 7, but definitely on a personal level, it's one of my favorites to tell, especially because his jet ski is in the door of Seasight.
Yeah, so I always tell people, I'm like, and folks, if you don't believe me, just so you know, he did not survive, but the jet ski survived, and it is located right on 3rd Street in the front of Sightsee Rentals. And that is like the best way to, you're telling some of these ridiculous stories, and you're like, oh, and by the way, the jet ski's sitting 3 blocks away.
Well, when I did driving tours all through the winter, etc., and last year, when I do driving tours, I come along 3rd Street, and I pull up in front so they could, I've set them up that they know the story. But now, by the way, here's some evidence for you, you know?
Of the infamous jet ski.
Yeah.
Angela brought up the human hamster ball, and the human hamster ball one, like, that one gets like 3s for me. Like, Kirk Jones. Like, Kirk Jones was in a giant inflatable soccer ball with a boa constrictor. Like, dude. Like, and mind you, this man had already survived going over the falls where it, with no contraption, just went over. So, like, yeah, I don't. A lot of these daredevils, like, that are supposed to be, like, I don't know, all of the, like, either they're the really old ones or the really weird ones. Like, we talk about, like, Monday and Trotter a lot and, like, the battle to see who could do it the most times. And neither of them interest me that much. Both of them have gone over twice and survived twice. They're the only ones to do that. And I just find both of them to be boring because I'm like, this is just 2 bros that are like, hey, I could go over the falls more times. One's like, I'm gonna bring my girlfriend, now my ex-girlfriend. Like, I don't know. Like, some of these are like, success, yes, 10 on success. You succeeded, you went over, but like 0 on like guys, you know, boring. Amateur hour. You went over the falls in a barrel. We do not condone doing this. It's a $10,000 fine, by the way, if you do it. So don't do that.
Well, folks, been a quiet night, but we will have better plans for next week.
No, we won't.
Of course we will.
We had great plans this week. We talked about daredevils. We dared the devils to dare. Yes. I was dressed like Duke Kaboom.
And I let commercials run on our show. There you go.
You did. You let plenty. Peter, now I know what to get you for Christmas.
A new hand. All right. Well, I'm saying goodnight, folks. Have a great week. Come see Niagara Falls.
Yes, please come see Niagara Falls. It's beautiful weather out. It really is.
Is it time to say goodbye?
It's time to say goodbye, Peter.
Bye, Peter.
Bye, Peter.